In 1973, Sergio Martino created his masterpiece, and indeed a masterpiece of the giallo film. Torso perfectly encapsulates the genre, but its music and extraordinary end to the film set it apart as a unique giallo classic. I am the Italian Horror Guy, and this is the Italian Horror Guy podcast. Now, what's different about this episode is I'm doing something of a watch-along. I decided to mix it up today, and I've got the film playing in the background. I'm currently about 20 minutes into it, and I think I'm going to talk throughout the rest of the film. It's perfectly timed there, actually. We've got the shot currently of the lady who's walking through that forest when it's foggy, and she's just seen the killer in the distance in the fog, which I always found one of the coolest fucking shots in a horror movie. I'll occasionally be turning it up and down, in order to be able to hear it and whatnot, just to create a different vibe to this particular episode. What I had genuinely forgotten about this film is it's basically softcore porn, at least up until this point. Obviously, a big element of this genre, the sort of exploitation nature of it, was to, you're bringing people to the cinemas to see naked women to one extent or another. And here's just I hope you can hear it, but this fucking music, honestly, I think this is one of the best giallo films ever. It's the killer's cool with his mask. The music is unbelievable. I say this, I swear, I've probably said this in all 20 episodes, but the music is absolutely unbelievable. The vision to put this particular scene in this atmosphere as well, fantastic. And I think, as it turns out, it's one of the more satisfying explanations, I think, for a killer. I think there's something particularly imposing about this character, that he's nearly out in the open, right? Like there's plenty of suspense, but you get some suspense, then you get the revelation that the killer's there, then you get a bit more suspense, then he comes, but it's never about a jump scare or anything like that. He's so incredibly imposing, and these shots that they do it's happened a couple of times, I've just seen it here now, of him as he's moving his fingers towards the eyes, how it cuts to that shot from the doll, from his childhood and stuff. I think that's really cool. I also just think it's quite satisfying that it is, I hope my memory's correct, that it's the professor who is the killer, because there is a sense of power in this film, and power imbalance. The amount of just hostility in this film from all the men is really consistent. There's that sort of British guy, looks a bit like Billy Zane, and he he beats up a prostitute. I think it's a prostitute anyway. And it's like, I think I've made this point before about this, there's something this genre mastered, was this idea of, it's not just that when you find out who the killer is that all the other people are alleviated of all their sins. The fact is, the reason why, and often you get silly explanations and some slightly silly stories, but the reason why these films actually sort of get away with it sort of being, whoever is the killer, is because they've made it conceivable that so many characters would be the killer because they're all assholes. And that is the way I think these films sort of explore those depths, those dark depths of humanity in a as effective a way as most films do. Most other. It's just this genre does it particularly well. Because frankly, to put it as simply as possible, like just about every man that appears in this film is a fucking creep, right? And it's like enough of them are sort of central in order to be suspicious of everyone, or at least to have a lot of suspicions about different people. It's also worth noting the giallo genre was never short on beautiful people. This film is absolutely full of them. I hope I don't come across as a sleazebag sometimes, but we all love Susie Kendall, and it's nice to have her in this film. But just this, there's an aesthetic to this film, shall we say, and here's Billy Zane now. Just sort of looking at Susie Kendall and her friend from a distance, like a creep, as he did a lot of the time. So I love this. I don't even know what you call it, but this sort of central part of the film where all the characters seem to gather, and it's not clear if it's a road or some kind of, it's a plaza. Is that what it is? It's sort of weird because it's like every time we're there, we feel the presence of the killer, or the sort of the presence of threat. And we don't necessarily know who or what, but it's like it's this sort of interesting hub of this film. So, honestly, what an unbelievable start to the film I've witnessed. I get a bit blown away by it. We've got a bit of a suspense scene happening at the moment. Susie Kendall's friend with the big eyes is up in her apartment, and there's someone calling a payphone somewhere.
A word of advice: if you want to expand, don't try to recall who you see wearing that cooler.
I think it's
Red and black could be you or they.
I think it's got to be said that the shots that we get of the professor, for anyone who was taking any notice, it doesn't ever feel as though he mightn't be the killer, because he's never smiling and he's always got that extremely serious look on his face. And there was also that scene where I think the police come in and talk about the red and black scarf, and he's sort of standing in the background staring at the situation, looking relatively dodgy. But I'll just let some music play out here. I don't know what counts as copyright, by the way, so I won't overdo this.
Oh, thank God, you, Uncle Nino. I'm so sorry.
Uncle Nino. And I'm pretty sure he's the guy from, was it The Case of the Scorpion's Tail that I did last week, who I assumed was... I assumed the possibility that the guy who died in the plane crash hadn't actually died, because it was a picture of this guy. And because I'd recognised him as an actor, I thought he would play a bigger role than being a picture for a whole film. And he was also in the Cat o' Nine Tails by Argento gets thrown under a train. Back in this plaza, that bloody guy selling scarves and stuff with the sort of long stringy hair. Look, it's possible that actually this film maybe even overdoes it a little bit. It's like, so you get all these young guys who have very 70s looks, and they're sort of looking at each other and looking at women from distances, sort of with very rapey connotations. But this guy selling the glass with the sort of dodgy teeth and the bald patch and the hair, and he sort of he leans down to look up that girl's skirt sort of a bit earlier. It's like this guy might be a little bit too on the nose. I don't know. So he's currently talking to the police. I hope this is playing well as well. This is something I've never done before, and I sort of got the idea because I was watching it in order to take some notes and think about what I was going to say, and it probably comes across I mean, this is more of a live commentary, and I'm usually a bit more analytical, but I'm sure I'll do that as we go along. But frankly, I put it on, I was just so excited by how good it was. You could probably hear it in my voice. It's just really, really good. And I wanted to talk about it while I'm watching it. I'll probably go back and watch the whole thing without talking about it as well. In fact, I will, I'm sure, over the coming days probably. But yeah, so off he goes, the dodgy dude. He's calling someone. So, what are the other things to note about this film? Some of which I'll be talking about as we go along. I think I mentioned that it's very, very pornographic. I think one of the things that always happens with the giallo film... Well, actually, I'll premise that. I'll start by saying a lot of the horror films that aren't Italian horror films from the era could probably at times almost get away with the idea that, oh no, these naked women aren't being put in this movie to titillate you. No, that's just coincidental or incidental. The giallo was never quite that. Like, they would cast these unbelievably attractive women, often models, but it's shot with a certain... Put it this way, I think the American horror film of this era was violence plus naked women, and I feel like the giallo at times is violence and naked women, or naked women plus violence. And whether that is accurate or not, it's very accurate for this film. There's those weird sort of pornographic model shoots early, and there's just a lot of nudity. There's a lot of close-ups of naked breasts, and the thing is, within the context of this film making you feel like all the men in it are stalkers, it makes you feel like a stalker as well. Because what is on the screen you can't possibly not look at. But there's also a sense that, like, you shouldn't. She's just remembered Billy Zane's scarf that he was wearing as well. The big eyes girl, that is. Because it's like, again, with that sense of no one is completely innocent in these films. Like, this guy's a bit of a psycho, right? So it's not like when it turns out, I think it's sort of cool. I think it's like it turns out that his scarf is red with black, and the scarf that the killer had was black with red. I think that was the case anyway. I like that little nuance, and it's one of those things where they sort of they direct you towards a certain person, but it's like giallo films always do this. They'll accuse someone very, very early on, and it's like, well, it's clearly not going to be that person. I don't know if it I can think of an example when it has been, when they've accused someone very early and then they've sort of walked that back, or pretended it's not the case, and then it's been the revelation anyway. But it's like, this guy's just a little bit too psychopathic, I think. Now that bloke I mentioned earlier is spying on them. I think he's meant to be her uncle, and he's spying on her. So, and Susie Kendall's in there. Dodgy. Everyone's dodgy, right? Well, most of the women in this film are sort of damsels in distress, but all of the men are dodgy.
I'll phone you from Paris when I arrive. Take care of everything.
All right, till tomorrow morning. I can't go up to the village later if you can still in town.
I must say, the voice, the dubbing, I don't know, I assume it was Susie Kendall's actual voice in the Bird with the Crystal Plumage, but that's how I prefer her. This is the Barbara Boucher from Don't Torture a Duckling voice for her in this one. Don't like it. Doesn't go. It's not how I conceptualise her in my mind. I need to look these people up one day, actually, so I can put some names to their voices. It's also weird, this film, because I'm not totally sure what the location is. I probably should have worked it out. But the end of the film, you know, that rural setting, there aren't too many rural giallo films, and that's got a really different vibe, I think. Interesting to note the dodgy scarf seller guy is walking in this abandoned looking place with the cash, and it's reminding me very much of Giuseppe from Don't Talk to a Duckling right now. That's right, I'm pretty sure he gets hit by this car, doesn't he? Interesting, I was about to criticise the way he's running away from it. This might be the only time in the history of a film where when a person's being chased by something and they don't just step to the side. And they don't not just step to the side. He actually did, but jeez, we get a pretty good shot of the killer. We got a pretty good shot of his face. Jesus, that's brutal. Crushes him into a fucking brick wall. Reverses a number of times to crush him a number of times. Wow. Honestly, some of the architecture in I probably don't talk about it enough, but you know, some of the architecture in Italian horror films is just really, really unbelievable. In one of those sort of, I don't even know how to describe them, those sort of built-up areas. They're almost like big apartment areas or something. Just think Don't Torture a Duckling, but less crappy. Not the movie, obviously, greatest movie of all time, but less run down in terms of the building. Anyway, Susie Kendall's wandering through there, and it's all very, very nice. So, I feel like to this point in the movie, and I can't remember, we'll see as we go on, that we're seeing a much greater portion of action, or at very least the things that we desire in a giallo film. Like, it's constant, a higher portion than you see usually. So what are the things we want, right? Or what are the things that if we're in the 1970s that we expect to get? That is naked women and violence. It's pretty well non-stop, and there's not a lot of filler in this movie. That's what I think's so fascinating about it. There's stuff happening, like as in the stuff that I just mentioned, the excitement, and then everything that's happening in between seems to be really directly serving a purpose to either serve as the explanation at the back end of the film, but even beyond that, you know, just the investigations and stuff. Like it's honestly such a dense film. There's so much going on. She's just been scared by this typical. It's such a typical giallo thing, right? So one of the characters will wander into some place they're investigating something, and then like a wacky artsy person will appear, right? Great stuff. Here we go. We're on a train now. Character's sort of eyeing one of those trains like in Harry Potter where they've got the compartments. Someone, possibly the killer, eyeing off the legs of these ladies. asleep in the carriage. And yeah, it's happened a couple times actually in this film. We see someone that I think we've seen before, but then the characters don't sort of interact with them like they know each other. So a guy just came in, and I feel like we've seen him earlier, but no. Right, we've cut back to the plaza, and there's a bunch of very old, just directly creepy looking men. Just staring. Still staring, and we're seeing shots of legs, shots of pictures of men through the legs. It's the...
Hey, what do you think I'm doing? That guy's with me. Come on, let's go.
Fuck, this is so... It's so sleazy and creepy. I don't know why the fuck she's on this big tractor thing, but the way that scene is shot, it's as if she's like modelling or something, because everyone's being so brazen about their comments. But it's not even clear that she is hearing their comments, right? I don't know what the fuck is going on here. I don't know when a tractor has ever been a form of public transport, but off they go. Guy looks pretty happy with himself. But it's like every guy is eyeing them off, and they're talking to each other about the fact that they're pretty, and all of them are dodgy. And they're putting up a dodgy guy to go do something. So this sort of deliberate, almost like self-reflexive dodginess, right, is like, it might be a flaw of this film. I just think, as I've said, like, there are aspects of this film that are extraordinarily on the nose. Now it does all contribute to the overall sort of feeling of the film, but at the same time, I think a bit of tell or show, don't tell is always probably in order. That's alright, they do a lot of both in this film. Bell time. It's night time now. I don't know exactly where we are.
The Golden Bridge road is just like a prison. There's no one here most of the year. It was a paradise for thieves, so we put up the bars to this garrison. Good wait, Jane. She must have found the raid for the traffic.
Just this whole setting as well, right? Like,
There we are.
there's that shot I didn't describe when it came on. Actually, this massive mansion on at the top and edge of a cliff, and that's another thing. Like, you can guarantee that the cliff's going to be used, right? Like, you know someone's going to end up tumbling down from that cliff as the film goes on. But as I said, the architecture, the beauty, and everything that comes along with these films is just very, very consistent, right? She's joining them now, the three ladies. I can't remember how they all die. I'm pretty sure they all do. and they were slightly on edge, right? Just even when things are fun in these films, it's edgy.
I had trouble with my car in the Houston village. Hi, Hal. Hi, Ursula. Danny was worried about you. Well, she was right. It's the fault of my driving, I suppose. Look, clear the whole thing up. Stefano has nothing to do with it. Of course. Stefano's scarf was different. This had a red design and a black background. The one the inspector showed us was just the opposite. I'm so confused. If Stefano wasn't wearing that scarf, then who?
So there's the revelation about the scarf, I assume.
Look, forget it.
I hope when I'm going silent, in the expectation that you can actually hear what's going on, that actually is the case, or else there's just going to be a lot of white noise.
Forget it, boys. Those big birds aren't like us. The birds are best. There is. There's some grapes. Well, that needs to be honest, really right. I wouldn't mind spoiling them a little bit more. She was willing enough to me. That's not. Can you give him a try? Yeah.
And we get a little bit of sort of rapey talk.
Listen to Casanova. I tell you, please don't like.
It's constant, right? So just on that ending that I'm sure I'll describe in much more detail as we go along. If memory serves, like so we have a lot of stuff going on, right? A lot of different moving parts in this film, nudity, violence, different settings, all kinds of different things. But if memory serves, it's got a bit of a sort of Jaws vibe to it, where we have a lot going on, but at a certain point, we now shut off from all the previous events and previous settings, and we're focused in on these three characters, right? So it's almost like a different section, like a different sort of evolution of the film. So if memory serves, the ending is sort of a very long sequence without a lot of talking, and yeah. Lots of talking, lots of suspense, and lots of I think, as is always the case, like the explanations and stuff are always pretty, simplistic, even if they're really sufficient. They're never amazing, but like this film is, if memory serves, I don't think it's an amazing explanation, although it is one of the more solid ones. But by having such a long sequence at the end, we find ourselves with, I think, a greater sort of appreciation or justification for a killer's motives than you'll get in just about any giallo film, I think, or like it. Sometimes the actions that they put on or don't necessarily match the extent of like the specific psychological trauma or whatever it is that they've given for the killer. But I know this is based on some childhood trauma, but and all these traumas and stuff seem to relate to women, and he's currently witnessing one of the young ladies seducing one of the other ones. And as I say, with the sort of soft-core porn aspects of this film, these scenes are very drawn out. And also, I don't have the most intricate knowledge of the porn industry of the 1970s, but I think definitely compared to what was readily available at the time, this would have been extraordinarily titillating, right? It feels almost like it's pushing the envelope, not for the level of eroticism, but for the pure amount of it. I think seems to be pushing the envelope for what would be expected at the time, because there's just a lot more nudity in this film than in previous gialli, and it's way more drawn out. The creepy Giuseppe equivalent they've sent in there is running away. And the girls know they've been spotted, so I think that's another element of this film that I think is really satisfying. Well, I don't know if satisfying is the right word, but really adds to it, is the characters in it are very aware that they're unsafe, and I think a lot of the time in other giallo films, largely I think because they most giallo don't really go. They don't go to too much effort to sort of establish characters properly beyond the sort of main one or two. Like characters are sort of come and go with other gialli, whereas this one has a constant flow of the same characters. So there's more time to establish this sense that they're like, they're happy in certain senses, but they know something bad's going on, and they have this really. Well, they have these scary experiences, right? Like they know that they've just been watched while making out and stuff. But it adds to that overall sense that, it's not just that we know they're unsafe, right? It's not just that they are aware of bad things having happened elsewhere. They're aware that, like, the threat is sort of near them as well. Like, the film is determined to show you the danger, that they're in. And that's the thing, like, an element of these films is always the stalking. But this whole film feels way more stalkerish, because the whole film is almost stalking. It's not just the scenes, it's not just, can I just say this, so the creepy guy, he's just had his throat slit. It actually reminds me a little bit, I think I made the point about it in the case of the Scorpion's Tail episode last week, where there's a guy hanging off the roof, and it's like a long period of time, whilst it seems like we know what's going to happen. And it's similar to what we've just seen here. So this guy knows he's being followed, and there's these extended scene, maybe 30, 60 seconds long, where he's watching the killer come in. He's sort of cowering at the wall, and the killer just wanders up to him and slits his throat. And it's like, because we have such a thorough understanding of what's going on, we assume that something's going to change, right? That it's not just going to happen in that way, but nope, throat slit, and he's just been chucked down a well. Ah, yes. Guy's just delivering them their food, and they're all completely naked, sunbaking, and of course he's looking all rapey like. And Susie Kendall's noticed. It's also quite humorous, just in theory, like, they're aware of the murders having happened, they feel like they've been watched last night, but they're also just sort of out the front completely naked. It's just an interesting overall scenario, I think. And Susie Kendall's falling down the stairs very stupidly, clumsily, shall we say. Is that shot from the cliff again? The dodgy music that I'm sure you can hear. It's very interesting because they have a lot of these different shots of, like, sometimes a POV shot, sometimes they're people in the distance. And it's never clear which ones are the actual
If the swelling hasn't gone down by tomorrow, call me and we'll have an X-ray.
the killer or not. But again, it's like the association to the killer. So there's the scarf guy we turned out to be that guy in the distance. But he's a slight psycho. It's like, as I've said, like, it isn't just about using our determination and what we understand about who the killer is to try to put us off, like, oh, it's this guy. Now, that's an aspect of it, or an element of it. But it's sort of something slightly greater in these giallo films. It's like, no, the reason why you're willing to see that this guy could be the killer when they're clearly not, it isn't just an investigative thing. It's that they can be the killer because they're dodgy, because they're acting like they could be the killer. Like, that's the thing. We don't just reset. Now, obviously, it's not, horror movies aren't live happily ever after, but we don't just reset, you know, at the end of the film to, well, while those people are dead, the ones that have survived, you know, they know the people in their lives are good and the world is good outside of this one infiltrating evil force. It's like, no. The evil force feels very much like it's a product of an evil environment, right? Like, I guess the point is, like, if every male in this film feels like a murdering rapist, then of course one of them is actually going to be a murdering rapist. Okay, so now there's some naked prancing, and there is so much nudity in this film. That's right, this scene's so fucking good. They're at that river, and the big eyes girl can see someone across the river staring at them. That's so creepy and cool. That's right, it is Stefano, which is the scarf guy.
But I don't see anyone. I'm sure I saw someone a moment ago. It looked like Stefano. But Dad and you were friends, that's all. It was Stefano. Let's go home now.
They start gaslighting each other.
If it was Stefano, you would have answered, no?
Little river thing reminds me a little bit of Last House on the Left podcast episode that I just recorded earlier for the horror film science podcast. It's a shorter episode, that was only 31 minutes I think, so check that out as well. It's got such an interesting vibe, right? Like, it's almost this sort of childish, girly thing. They're now all in their 90s talking about things. It's like, it's got that innocence. Also, one thing I'll note, because I think I mentioned it briefly in the horror film science one that I just mentioned, about Last House on the Left, and that sort of part of the intrigue, I think, of the early 70s horror film is the post, like, hype of the hippie movement era, or post hype, should I say, of the hippie movement, where it's like we've gone from, you know, this sort of unattainable, unrealistic ideal about sexuality, and then so in that film it's like you can see that we're at the back end of that, and what would you say, the naive ideals have been exposed as just that. Earlier in this film, just before I turned it on, actually, I started the podcast where, with the woman getting murdered in the mud and the fog, there was a scene. Well, she was there. This hippie scene, and she's sort of making it. Well, there's sort of two, not making it. There's two guys sort of touching her, and she's very, like, out of it. She seems cooked in some way, right? But here we go, Stefano at the door. But that's right, he's dead. That's a pretty cool bloody scene, to be fair. That like we haven't achieved what or these ideals, right, that we're aiming for were never particularly attainable. But part of it is that there can be this naive approach to sexuality because it's been talked up as so, free love, man, all that kind of stuff, that it's not necessarily an ideal that we should be aiming to attain, although I'm not really for it myself. But it's not living in the real world. Like, you can have these ridiculous hippie parties. By the way, there's the best sort of hippie sounding music in that whole section, but it's like, yeah, there's going to be creeps. There shouldn't be creeps, but they're going to be there. So I feel like we're sort of entering the lengthy end section of this film. Susie Kendall's just woken up, and the last thing that we've seen is, that's right, I think she goes downstairs and then two or maybe all three of them are dead. Is something like that? Because we don't see what happens. Like, he puts...
Hey! I'm hungry! Aren't patients supposed to have their breakfast in bed?
Because if memory serves, like, they didn't really take the opportunity to show these killings. It comes out. Limping around. It's sort of interesting, actually, now that I think about it. Like, it sort of has to be the professor, because he's the only one that's like had a proper conversation with her throughout this film. So it wouldn't really be satisfying if it was nothing to do with him. There's the shot of the J&B, is it Scotch? Bloody love Susie Kendall. Back she goes down those stairs, she tumbled down. Just remember, I feel like she sort of sees them lying dead from a distance. Chair knocked over.
Daddy?
She's just great to spend. The cinematography's fantastic.
Daddy?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they're dead as fuck. Throats slit. At least two of them. So again, like, in a movie that's full of action, and you know what it is? So I think to this point you would say Susie Kendall, and I do this, I sort of go by actress name and stuff. It's so difficult to keep track of all the characters' names. And the friend with the big eyes is just obviously just being stabbed as well. That's Danny. I hadn't really thought about this until just this moment, but why it's good that they didn't actually show the killings here. One is it doesn't matter as such because there's so much action in this film anyway. But two, to properly separate Susie Kendall as the character that we want to care about, we see those deaths as a reveal from her perspective and a reveal from our perspective, so we're sort of on her side now. And now we lead to this very long section. She's hiding. The killer's taking a hacksaw to... Jeez. So one of the ladies that's been murdered, he's cutting her up. Classic giallo music, as you can... I think he's cutting them all up, actually. least we know it's not this dog.
I have to pick up the empties. Anyone home? Well?
Jeez. Unforgiving job. He looks like he has to work really hard on that bike. Anyway. I think by having so many different shots of the killer as well, we get a nice equal mix of that sense of the being both methodical but also human. I'm not broadly critical of Argento when I can help it, but I've always had this thing with his films, and indeed a lot of the other giallo films, that what happens throughout, because you just get, like they love the shots of the hands and stuff and them being sort of almost like autistically methodical with certain things, and everything's very organised and stuff, until the second they get revealed and you have to have an actual like action sequence, and then suddenly they just feel completely out of character. Now if I wanted to be being really charitable, I could say, well, it's because they've been exposed or blah blah blah, but yeah, I'm not so sure about that argument. But here it's like he's relatively methodical, but he's not doing it perfectly, but also just the extent to which, like that idea of you know, women or at least murder victims being treated like items, like just things, right? These extended scenes of seeing the bodies and then seeing him cut them up. It's great stuff, and I believe we've sort of just entered in the last couple of minutes a very long section with like no dialogue for like a long period of time. I know there's not a lot. So he's just gone outside and Susie's hiding behind something, and he's put the deliveries in the bread and the milk. And I wonder if is the insinuation there that he's doing it to feed her, like he's taking care of her. It actually reminds me a lot of Susie Kendall, but with the crystal clippers, yeah. If you remember, she's sort of stuck in a house by herself and the killer's around. Great stuff. Of course, phone doesn't work. I'm sure he's disabled it. Not having much luck with those stairs. It's interesting how pathetic Susie Kendall ends up being in both of these films, like, because she's got a real sort of authoritative vibe about her. Very cool shot as well on top of the cliff, using this mirror to trap the sun to try to get attention. That's just cool stuff.
politically aware.
Who cares? I like to have all three.
Oh, a desert island.
Naked. In a storm.
In a storm. Why? It's more emotional.
You need an assist?
I hope that that came through. It's generic, sexist, male discussion. Like the film is absolutely relentless with it, right? Like all men are sleazebags, all of them are potential rapists. It's By the way, I'm not, as you probably picked up in previous episodes, I'm not one of these raging lefties or anything. I'm not sure that it's a comment on all men being horrible or something like that, but the point is the world that they're depicting here is extraordinarily hostile and one that these young women need to be very careful with. So we see him coming back, the killer coming back, and again, like, the film's not particularly hiding the ball on who it is. Like, we've just seen his hair. Like, I think it's cool the way they do that. Like, they're basically showing us, but not exactly. But if you're aware enough, then you're going to work out that it is who it is. But yeah, it has already been a number of minutes since there's been a word spoken, at least up here. She's in the room. Against the door. Opening it. She's so bloody clumsy. She's not gone and knocked over a chair. Bloody honestly, how good's the use of piano? Just subtle, building up that suspense. Just my memory of it was that he was sort of like aware that she was in there. So she's hiding in a closet, obviously the safest place to hide when there's a killer around. Unbearable suspense. So we see the mouth of the killer there. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I think that's insinuation because he locks the door, so he obviously knows that she's in there. And that's just so cool, right? Like, how creepy is that? He was actually aware that she was in there. So I think, anyway. He's picked up her shoes. Maybe he recognises them from earlier in the film. Don't know. He's bringing them back. Honestly, these lengthy scenes with no dialogue, it's just so damn cool, right? I also love this sort of conceit of the film to not show his face, even though, like in these scenes, even though we've basically been told exactly that it's him. It's also interesting because I find, this sort of candid, what do we show or pretend that the killer is doing, to like what am I trying to say? Like in a horror movie when there's a situation that a person's trying to escape or something, and we need to buy time for why the killer isn't killing them right at the moment. This whole sequence is very long, and it's really, really all about the suspense, but they're serving sort of double purpose because it's the suspense, but it's really sort of delving into the real creep of what serial killers are or what horror film villains are, because he's like this whole sequence. Susie Kendall's trying to find a way to escape, and he is just very slowly cutting these bodies up and getting rid of them, and that would take a long time, especially if he doesn't need to be in any massive hurry. It just needs to get rid of them.
Hey, I tell you I saw him. Hey!
And that's the delivery guy claiming that he saw them naked.
Yeah, well, I was there, wasn't I? I know there's another 2. There's 8 legs, 8 titties, and 4 sets of ass. Balls. Either you were drunk or you never set foot in the store. Hey, you dreaming. Yeah, wet dreaming. You were jealous because you weren't there. I tell you, there were 4 girls up there. The fourth one came in my car. Her car's still down there at the filling station. Go see for yourself if you don't believe me.
So dodgy. Of course, this is... No, so he didn't realise that she was there, because obviously they've got that there. Because he's realised there's a 4th one up there. Okay. I mean, I sort of prefer the idea that he knew that she was there and he locked her in there, but I'm not going to pretend that's the case. Yeah.
She basically don't know what happened, but it can't get you, or was it one of our good women drivers? It was like what I found on a curb.
Another comment about women drivers. So hostile this
Who's it? Belongs to one of the girls staying up there at the old villa. Broke the spring. I repaired it myself, but she hasn't picked up the car. I drove it up there myself. They were all gone. Thought she sprained her ankle. Perhaps one of her friends took her home. Strange. They must have left last night because, well, I've been here since early this morning.
Well,
I've seen no one go up or down all day.
I might call it a day here.
Shall I float
And
up the door?
enjoy the
No, thanks.
end of this film without commenting over it. This has been a different experience. I'll listen to it back and see how it plays. If it hasn't been great, I do apologise. I hope it has. It's sort of a live... It's not exactly a reaction because I've seen it before, but nonetheless, it's been really enjoyable. Next week I will do The Mountain of the Cannibal God, I believe it's called, to round out my Sergio Martino triple. And yeah, join me for that. As I say, I hope this has been enjoyable. I haven't breached any copyright by playing too much of the film in the background, but I'm not sure I'll get caught anyway. But yeah, have a great week, everyone, and join me for episode 21 of the Italian Horror Guy podcast.
Those 2 boys.
I'm back. I've decided I just have to. I just have to talk about this ending because I'd forgotten just how in depth they go into the explanation.
I couldn't give her time to remember.
Because
The colors were reversed.
I'd forgotten how good it was. The colours were reversed with the scarf, yeah. The explanation's great. Again, slightly simplistic, but like the little girl who was responsible for the death, I think, of his brother, by tricking him into trying to get a doll. But also, the main reason I felt the need to comment was because Susie Kendall is very clothed throughout the course of this film, and I believe with the Christian Plumage as well. And basically, the expectation, it seems, in giallo films is that, you know, the women aren't clothed, but like that line, you're not like the others. And a big part of that explanation was that they'd seduced him and they were blackmailing him. And it's this, I just think it's one of the best examples or the best encapsulations of that giallo tradition. Horror film in general, but so consistently in the giallo of the killer, just a guy who just hates being at the whims of like their sexual desire for women and then sort of misplacing that anger towards them. So yeah, I think that's all I needed to say. It's just a little bit extra. But ultimately, the ending of this film, it's one of the more epic ends, as you can hear, to a giallo film, and I think it captures so much of what the giallo is all about. So I felt the need to comment on that. So again, do join me next week, and I hope my analysis was interesting.